At some point, you stopped expecting people to stay. Not because you wanted to be alone, but because depending on someone started feeling dangerous. Maybe they disappointed you. Maybe they left when you needed them most. Maybe they made you feel like your emotions were too heavy, too complicated, too much. So slowly, without even realizing it, you changed. You stopped asking for help, stopped explaining how you felt, stopped reaching out first. You learned how to carry sadness quietly, how to survive difficult days alone, how to say "I'm fine" before anyone even had the chance to ask. And after a while, people started calling you strong, independent, emotionally detached, unbothered. But what they never understood is that people who need no one usually became that way after needing someone too much. Because the truth is, this was never really strength. It was protection. It was your nervous system trying to make sure you never felt that kind of disappointment again. So you built walls. Healthy at first, necessary even. But over time, those walls stopped protecting you. They started isolating you. And now, even when someone genuinely cares about you, a part of you still struggles to trust it. A part of you still expects people to leave eventually. So you keep everything inside. You handle everything alone. You become the calm one, the strong one, the one who never needs anything. But armor is heavy, and carrying your entire life alone is slowly exhausting you. If this feels painfully familiar, stay with me. Because this video is not about weakness. It is about the people who became emotionally self-sufficient, not because they were born fearless, but because life taught them that relying on others came with consequences. And almost nobody talks about what that does to a person over time. You were not always like this. There was a time when reaching out felt natural, when you trusted people without analyzing everything first, when you believed that if you were hurting, someone would notice, someone would stay. You did not always carry everything alone. And then life taught you something. Maybe slowly, maybe all at once. Someone you depended on disappeared when you needed them most. Someone you opened your heart to made you regret being vulnerable. Someone you loved deeply showed you that affection could change overnight, and after enough disappointment, your mind adapted. Quietly, intelligently, it started treating emotional dependence like danger. Because the brain does not care about happiness first. It cares about survival. So it created a rule. Do not rely too much on anyone. Do not expect too much. Do not need too much. Because needing people started feeling unsafe. And from that moment forward, you began rebuilding yourself around self-protection. You stopped asking for help, stopped explaining your pain, stopped letting people see the full weight of what was happening inside you. You became the calm one, the capable one, the person who could survive anything alone. And everyone admired that version of you. But what they never saw was how exhausting it became. Because hyper-independence is not always confidence. Sometimes it is a trauma response disguised as strength. Psychologists call this hyper-independence. A state where relying on others feels more emotionally dangerous than carrying everything by yourself. And the difficult part is this. Even when someone genuinely wants to help you now, a part of you still hesitates. Not because you do not want connection, but because your nervous system remembers what disappointment felt like last time. So instead of leaning on people, you isolate quietly. You convince yourself that you are better alone, that you do not really need anyone. But late at night, during the moments when everything finally becomes quiet, you feel the weight of carrying an entire life by yourself. And deep down, you know something painful. You do not actually want to do everything alone. You just no longer know how to feel safe depending on someone else. Here is the part nobody talks about. The hidden cost of becoming someone who needs no one. And I need you to really sit with this, because most people never realize what they are actually sacrificing. When you stop depending on people, you also stop feeling truly known by them. Think about that carefully. Real connection only happens when another person is allowed to see the parts of you that are not polished, not the composed version, not the emotionally controlled version, not the version that always says "I got it." The real version, the exhausted version, the overwhelmed version, the version that gets lonely too, the version that secretly wishes someone would notice the weight you carry without you having to explain it first. But you never fully show that person to anyone. So people end up loving the version of you that learned how to survive, not the version of you that actually wants connection. And somewhere deep down, you feel this constantly, which creates a kind of loneliness that is difficult to explain to other people. Because technically, you are not alone. You have conversations. You have friends. You have people around you. But emotionally, you still feel unseen. Not because nobody cares about you, but because nobody ever reaches the parts of you that stay hidden behind the armor. And over time, your body starts carrying this isolation too. The tightness in your chest that appears for no reason. The tension in your shoulders that never completely leaves. The exhaustion that sleep somehow never fixes. That quiet anxiety in the background of your life, even during peaceful moments. Your nervous system was never designed to carry an entire emotional life alone. And that is the tragedy of hyper-independence. From the outside it looks powerful, but internally it slowly disconnects you from the very thing human beings need most. Not attention, not validation. Connection. Because human beings are not built merely to survive. We are built to be seen, to be understood, to feel safe enough to put the armor down around someone without fearing they will use your vulnerability against you. And the painful irony is this: the stronger you become at carrying everything alone, the harder it becomes to let anyone truly love you. There is a version of independence that is genuinely healthy. It is the person who knows themselves deeply, who can sit alone without feeling abandoned by the silence, who does not need constant validation to feel valuable. That kind of independence is real strength. But there is another version that looks almost the same from the outside. This version says they do not need anyone, not because they are healed, but because they are protecting a wound. This version keeps emotional distance from people. They disappear when life gets difficult. They avoid asking for help. They joke instead of opening up. Not because they are cold, but because depending on someone once hurt them enough, that closeness stopped feeling safe. And after a while they start calling this strength. But often it is emotional shutdown disguised as independence. The real difference between these two people appears late at night, when everything becomes quiet. No distractions, no noise, no one to perform for. One person feels peace in that silence. The other feels an emptiness they have spent years trying not to notice. Epictetus once said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do happen." He was talking about acceptance. But many people misuse that wisdom. They turn acceptance into emotional shutdown. They say, "This is just who I am. I do not need people. I am better alone." But being emotionally guarded and being emotionally whole are not the same thing. And deep down you already know the difference. Real emotional independence is not pretending you need nobody. It is knowing you could survive alone, but no longer feeling afraid to let people in. That is the difference. Real strength is not emotional shutdown. It is the ability to stay open without abandoning yourself in the process. It is the person who can say, "I can carry this alone, but I do not have to anymore." Not because they are weak, not because they are desperate, but because they trust themselves enough to be vulnerable without losing who they are. That is the version worth becoming. Not the fortress, the person who no longer needs the fortress, because they trust themselves enough to survive disappointment without closing their heart completely. And healing usually begins very quietly. The next time you say "I'm fine," pause for a second and ask yourself, am I actually fine? Or have I just become used to carrying everything alone? Notice the moments you push people away, right when they start getting close, not to judge yourself, just to finally see the pattern clearly. Because patterns cannot change while they remain invisible. And slowly you start teaching your nervous system something new. That being supported is not weakness. That vulnerability is not danger. That the right people will not punish you for being human. And the wrong people? You already survived them. Now it is time to stop surviving and start learning how to feel safe being connected again. I want to tell you something that most hyper-independent people struggle to admit. Needing people is not weakness. It is not failure. It is not proof that you are broken or emotionally behind everyone else. It is proof that you are human. The person who claims they need nobody is not always the strongest person in the room. Sometimes they are just the most exhausted. Exhausted from carrying everything alone. Exhausted from pretending they are unaffected. Exhausted from acting like the weight does not hurt anymore. And after a while they become so used to emotional isolation that vulnerability starts feeling unnatural. Even when they desperately want connection, you are allowed to want someone to check on you. You are allowed to want support without feeling guilty for needing it. You are allowed to have moments where you do not want to be the strong one anymore. Because no human being was designed to carry an entire emotional life alone forever. And the hardest part about hyper-independence is this. The walls that protected you from disappointment also protected you from closeness, from comfort, from softness, from the kind of peace that only exists when you no longer feel emotionally alone around other people. And maybe healing is not about tearing every wall down overnight. Maybe it begins by letting one safe person see a little more of you than before. Not the polished version, not the emotionally controlled version, the real one. Because you deserve relationships where you do not have to earn love by pretending you need nothing. You deserve connection that feels safe enough for you to finally put the armor down. Not someday. Now. Exactly as you are. The person who needed no one built something powerful. They became resilient, capable, strong enough to survive almost anything alone. And that deserves respect. But somewhere underneath that strength, there is also a person who got tired of being disappointed. A person who learned that depending on people felt dangerous and slowly turned self-protection into a lifestyle. At first it felt safe, but over time the armor became heavy. And maybe that is the question you need to ask yourself now. Is this real independence or emotional distance? Is this strength or survival? Did you truly outgrow the need for connection, or did you simply become afraid of what happens when people let you down? Because there is a difference between enjoying solitude and convincing yourself you no longer need anyone. One comes from peace. The other comes from pain. And deep down you already know which one lives inside you. You do not have to trust everyone overnight. You do not have to tear every wall down at once. But you are allowed to stop carrying everything alone. You are allowed to believe that vulnerability is not weakness. That the right people will not use your softness against you, and that your value was never measured by how much pain you could survive silently. The strongest thing you will ever do is not learning to need nobody. It is learning that even if people disappoint you sometimes, you will still be okay. That is real emotional freedom, not isolation. Peace. Understand yourself. Master your world. Silent dominion.